This is a presentation about Hitler's henchmen and who were the leading men in Hitler's Germany. So, to start off with, one of the most important individuals in Nazi Germany was Hermann Göring. Göring was one of the earliest members of the Nazi Party in the early 1920s, along with Hitler. He became, I suppose, even more well known in the 1930s due to his four-year plan for the German economy. Starting in 1937, he replaced Schacht as Minister of the Economy. He introduced a four-year plan, and the main aim of that plan was to make Germany self-sufficient so it didn't have to rely on imports. The plan had limited success. He was seen as the aristocratic and, if you like, the kind of intelligent, classy face of the party in the early years. If you compared him to some perhaps members of the SA, it would be a very, very different impression that he gave. He got on with people, he was very intelligent. There's actually a fantastic film called Nuremberg, looking at the trials after World War II. And if you watch that film, it's a really clever interpretation of Göring in terms of what he was like. He was in charge of the Luftwaffe during World War II, and most notably during the Battle of Britain. In 1942, he admitted setting fire to the Reichstag as part of the Reichstag fire in an interview, in a meeting that was recorded in the diary of Goebbels, where Goebbels actually overheard Göring boasting about setting it up. However, there's still lots of historical debate over who actually started the Reichstag fire. And he also beat the hangman's noose at the end of World War II by committing suicide in jail. And he was very much discredited and outside of Hitler's inner circle by the end of the war. Heinrich Himmler. Heinrich Himmler is possibly one of the most famous individuals in Nazi Germany, apart from possibly Hitler. He was leader of the SS from 1934 onwards. He was a former chicken farmer. He actively participated and led the Night of the Long Knives, along with Hitler and other members of the SS. They actually rounded up Röhm and key members of the SA on that night, June the 30th, 1934. He increased the power of the SS in the 1930s. He also appointed Heydrich, who we'll come on to later, and the power of the SS greatly increased. It almost became an empire within an empire. He was very much responsible for building the concentration camp structure across Germany and occupied territories during World War II. And he played a key role in carrying out the final solution, as well as deciding on the location of Auschwitz. And also he visited Auschwitz on many occasions to actually oversee the planning and building of the crematoria and the gas chambers. Joseph Goebbels. Joseph Goebbels was Minister of Propaganda during the 1930s and World War II. He was a master of his art. He produced posters, he censored books, he produced many well-known movies, including The Triumph of the Will, which presented Hitler as some kind of demigod. He was very subtle in his techniques and very successful. Even when the war was going badly for Germany, his propaganda really did have an effect and really kept the war going. He was virulently anti-Semite. He hated the Jews. He really inputted greatly into the final solution and its development. He was responsible for the policy of total war from 1943 onwards. On one of the other videos, the World War II video, you can actually see a speech by Goebbels where he announces total war and the policy. Heydrich, nicknamed the Blonde Beast, not a very pleasant individual. He was promoted through the SS structure in the 1930s. He became notorious for his ruthless nature. He became Right Protector of Bohemia and Moravia in the Czech Republic from 1940 onwards, or Czechoslovakia as it was known then. It was a reign of terror, essentially. He was assassinated by British-trained Czech agents in Prague in May 1942, which then led to the massive massacre at Lidice. If you want to look that up, you can. A whole village was basically burned to the ground. by the Nazis in Czechoslovakia in retaliation for his assassination. And finally, perhaps the most powerful but less well known actually of Hitler's inner circle was Martin Bormann. He was Hitler's private secretary and controlled access to Hitler. Perhaps in the last 3-4 years of the war, he was particularly powerful. Many historians consider him actually the most powerful man apart from Hitler in the Third Reich. He vanished mysteriously at the end of the war in the Battle of Berlin. His body was never discovered, although DNA was discovered in the 1970s in a Berlin cemetery that did match up to